card, like the one that's coming up in New York. I give my winner and how they're going to win. So let's get started. In the Fight Pass prelims, I'm going to start with Caitlin Chookagian versus Irene Aldana. Both young prospects in the bantamweight division. Both coming off losses, though, but they're both young in their careers. Both prefer the striking. Caitlin Chookagian is a karate fighter. She's been doing it for a very long time. She has some experience in boxing, and she's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. And she trains with Mark Henry, Frank Yeager, Eddie Alvarez, all those guys over there. So she has a good camp behind her. And she's fighting Irene Aldana, or Irene Aldana. She's a bit more well-rounded, although she prefers the striking, and she likes to brawl sometimes. She has a lot of finishes in her career. So I see this fight being mainly on the feet. And I think Caitlin Chookagian is going to be a bit more elusive. She's going to use her kicks often. She's going to get away from Aldana. And I think she's going to win on points. I think she's going to win by a decision. And then we go to the prelims on Fox Sports 1. Kamaru Usman versus Sean Strickland. I've been seeing a lot of promise of Kamaru Usman. He's a grinder, very, very good wrestler, very pressuring. He's pretty long for the division. He used to come from the Blackzilians, but they separated, so I'm not too sure where he comes from now, or where he trains at. He might train with Henry Hoof, but I'm not too sure. And he's fighting Sean Strickland, who's a bit more well-rounded, although he does like the striking. In this fight, Sean Strickland wants to avoid the ground. He doesn't want Kamaru Usman to get on top of him because he's very hard to get off, and Usman has some very good submission defense. So Strickland wants to avoid the ground game. But I do see Kamaru Usman taking him down, controlling him throughout the whole fight, and riding it out to a decision. And then we go to the feature prelim fight. Miles Jury versus Mike De La Torre. Miles Jury's coming off a year layoff from his loss against Charles Oliveira. This is a featherweight fight too, so they're both very tall featherweights, 5'11" each of them, taller than some welterweights. Both are a bit well-rounded, but Miles Jury likes to keep it more technical. Mike De La Torre is a bit more aggressive, in-your-face kind of fighter, although he's a bit well-rounded himself. Both are coming off losses. Both lost in the first round by submission. I think Miles Jury is too technical, and I think he wins by a decision. And then we go to the main card. Will Brooks versus Charles Oliveira. Will Brooks coming off that loss from Alex Oliveira. Very strange fight. He's very good with his wrestling, very well-rounded. More well-rounded in this fight than Charles Oliveira. Although he does like the wrestling more, he's very good with kicks, staying on the outside when he can. And although he has been criticized for keeping it safe sometimes, but Charles Oliveira is the opposite. There's nothing safe about Charles Oliveira. Everything he does is very risky. He attacks off his back constantly. He enjoys the striking. He likes to exchange shots. But he is coming from featherweight, and he's coming into this fight at 155. He didn't make weight in his last fight for featherweight, so this could be a better weight class for him. He's very long for the division. He has a 74-inch reach, and Will Brooks has a 72-inch reach. Where Oliveira can make it very dangerous for Will Brooks is on the ground. Because Will Brooks always takes the fight to the ground. But Brooks did fight Marcin Held, who's very similar to Charles Oliveira, in the way that Held is also very risky. He takes risks constantly. He's very good on the ground off his back as well. But Will Brooks was able to control him completely. And I think that's what's going to happen in this fight. I think Will Brooks, he's going to control Charles Oliveira, avoid the submissions, get Charles Oliveira tired, and win by a decision. And then we go to Thiago Alves versus Patrick O'Tay, the veterans. This fight's coming in late in their careers. You could say they're both a little bit past their prime. Thiago Alves coming from lightweight. Didn't go too well there against Jim Miller. He's returning to welterweight. He's a bit small for the division at 5'9". Thiago Alves, very explosive, very dynamic striker. Has some of the best leg kick combos I've ever seen in the UFC. Very hard to take down if he's not fighting GSP. Very tough too, and he's fighting Patrick O'Tay, who's also extremely tough. Known for his chin. He's pretty good on the ground. He likes to brawl. He likes to exchange shots, which could be very dangerous against a guy like Thiago Alves. But I do see Patrick O'Tay winning this fight. I don't see Thiago Alves showing up like he used to in his prime. I don't see that happening. I see Patrick O'Tay winning by possibly a second round TKO or a decision. And then we go to Cynthia Calvillo versus Pearl Gonzalez. Very interesting fight. A lot of people have been interested in Cynthia Calvillo ever since her first UFC fight, which is crazy. She's got a lot of buzz. Both of these fighters are so similar. Both are BJJ heavy, love the grappling. They're willing to exchange on the feet, but their strength is on the ground. They both attack for submissions constantly, relentless on the ground. Both have pretty good cardio. I've seen Pearl Gonzalez's fights. She actually submitted Courtney Casey in the third round, who's a UFC fighter who's more experienced than both of these fighters. So she has probably the biggest win of caliber opponent out of the two fighters. But I think Cynthia Calvillo is a better version of Pearl Gonzalez. I think they're so similar, but I think Cynthia Calvillo is a bit better in all areas, and I think that's going to show in this fight. I think it's going to be very competitive. Pearl Gonzalez is going to give a lot of problems for Cynthia Calvillo. She's going to make it a tough fight for her. I predict Cynthia Calvillo is going to submit her in the second round, though. And then we go to the co-main event. Chris Weidman versus Gegard Mousasi, the hardest fight to call on the card. I am almost 50-50 in this fight. Both are extremely confident in this fight. Seems like both are taking this fight extremely seriously. If you've seen videos on Chris Weidman, he's probably in the best shape I've ever seen in his career. He even mentioned it. He said mentally and physically, he's never been stronger. He's never been more confident, and he's never been more ready for a fight. That's what he's been saying. And he looks like it too. You can see it out of him. Gegard Mousasi has been on a roll. His confidence has been an all-time high as of lately. And he's very confident in his wrestling in this fight. He's been working a lot on wrestling. He's brought in some very good wrestlers, and his coaches have been saying that Gegard will not be taken on this fight. And they're saying if he does get taken down, he'll pop right back up. But it's a very hard fight to call. Chris Weidman's coming off 2 devastating losses. The only 2 losses in his whole career. Gegard's been finishing everybody. Chris Weidman's predominantly a wrestler, although he's very well-rounded. Both are very well-rounded. Both are some of the most well-rounded fighters in the whole division. Weidman has some good striking. He's good with his boxing. He's very long for the division. 78-inch reach, which is insane for middleweights. Where he shines is in his wrestling and his pressure. He likes to be the bully in the fight. He's extremely strong on top. He's so heavy on top. You can see in the fights with Anderson Silva, Damian Maia, Mark Munoz, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort. None of them could get him off. None of them could even attack off their back. He's so heavy on top and he's so defensively sound on top. But Gegard is extremely well-rounded, predominantly a striker. He's very fast. His jab is so fast. He snaps it out there. He always leans forward and he catches people at the end of it. Very precise striker. And he's very good off his back. Very underrated. People forget how good he is off his back. So my prediction for the fight, it's very hard to call, but I'm going to pick Gegard Mousasi. I think Gegard is going to win by a second or third round TKO or submission. And then we go to the main event, Daniel Cormier versus Anthony Johnson, the rematch. Very interesting fight. If you look at videos of these 2 fighters, Johnson's been shining. He looks so confident. He looks so ready for this fight. He looks in very good shape. He doesn't look drawn out like he usually did. And then you look at Daniel Cormier, he actually looks drawn out. He looks not as enthusiastic as he was before. It might be because he doesn't have Cain Velasquez in his camp. He doesn't have Luke Rockhold in his camp. That could be a lot of problems for him against a guy like Anthony Johnson. He needs those partners. That's what he said before when he fought John Jones. He said he lost. One of the reasons was because he didn't have Cain Velasquez in his camp. Well, guess what? He doesn't have Cain Velasquez again. So Daniel Cormier, very wrestling heavy, very pressuring, very short for the division, but he's very powerful, very strong with his wrestling, breaks opponents. The thing about Anthony Johnson, which makes Daniel Cormier a tough fight for him, is that Anthony Johnson does have quit in him. That's the truth. He does give up. It's very hard to get past that. It's very hard to throw that characteristic away. So when things get rough for Anthony Johnson, we've seen it not just one time. We've seen it several times. When it gets past that first round, when he's thrown everything at the opponent and they get him down, they pressure him, they control him on the ground. We've seen him quit before. We've seen it against Vitor Belfort. We've seen it with Josh Koscheck. But Anthony Johnson is the hardest puncher, hardest kicker in light heavyweight history. He has a very vicious left kick, left high kick. He's very powerful with both hands. This all comes down to how does Anthony Johnson show up in this fight? Does he approach it to take Daniel Cormier's head off in the first round? I don't think that's what's going to happen. He's working heavily with Henry Hooft, and Henry Hooft is a very, very experienced striker, very intelligent in the stand-up game. I don't think Anthony Johnson is going to come at Daniel Cormier the way he did the first fight. I think he's going to be a bit more patient. Ever since he lost to Daniel Cormier, he has been on a 3-win streak, all knockouts. He knocked out Jimmy Manuwa. He knocked out Ryan Bader. He knocked out Glover Teixeira. And he was a bit more patient in those 3 fights. More than he was in the Daniel Cormier fight, which shows something. And his wrestling defense was much better. And his wrestling offense was much better. I think mentally Anthony Johnson is better than he was before. And that makes him a better fighter than he was in the first fight. And I don't think Daniel Cormier is going to change that much. It's a very tough fight to call, but if I have to pick the winner, I'm going to go with Anthony Johnson. I think he finishes Daniel Cormier in the 3rd round. I think he's going to be more of a counter striker in this fight. I think he's going to wait for Daniel Cormier, but not back up against the cage. I think he's going to wait for him to meet him in the middle, and I think he's going to pick his shots and land precise, accurate shots on Daniel Cormier. Those are my predictions, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and be sure to leave in the comments below, what are your guys' predictions? I'm curious to see what you guys think. If you agree with me, disagree with me, make sure you leave in the comments below. Early next week, I'm going to make a breakdown video on one of these fights, so be on the lookout for that, and thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys watch the fights, and I'll see you in the next video.